My name is Vanessa Clark, I'm 31, and my parents convinced me to put the house I bought with my own money under their names for legal reasons. Then they gave it to my brother as a wedding gift. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. It was Monday 14/12, when the notary's office door clicked shut behind me. The smell of toner and polished wood still clung to my jacket as I walked out with a manila envelope tucked under my arm. Inside were the signed deeds, my savings, my dream, now recorded under my parents' names. The notary had smiled politely, sliding the papers across the desk as if he hadn't just stripped me of years of sacrifice. I tried to convince myself it was fine. Dad had said, "It's just a formality, Ness. Banks look kindly on our age and history. Safer this way." Mom nodded with that rehearsed tone she used when she wanted something, adding, "Think of it as protection. You're young, you don't want to make mistakes with legalities." The house wasn't extravagant, 1,480 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a small backyard with patchy grass, but I'd saved for 6 years to make the down payment. Working overtime at the design firm, freelancing on weekends, eating instant noodles for months at a time. Every check I wrote toward that house carried a piece of me. And yet, on that Monday I walked out with nothing but their promises. The first mismatch came a year later at my brother's wedding reception. He clinked his champagne glass, smiling wide, as Dad announced the surprise gift. My house. My home. Handed to him as though it had never been mine. The applause roared, the music swelled, and I sat frozen, fork halfway to my mouth. The injustice burned hot under my skin, but I stayed silent. Not one word, not one scene. I just smiled tightly, excused myself early, and walked out into the cold night air. I didn't know yet that in 6 months, when the bills started piling in their names and the repairs bled their pockets dry, the same parents who stripped me of my house would start calling non-stop. The wedding was on a Saturday evening, 1840 sharp, in a rented banquet hall with gold-trimmed mirrors and chandeliers that smelled faintly of melted wax. The air was thick with perfume and champagne fizz, the sound of cutlery clinking against porcelain. I'd chosen a navy dress, simple but formal, and sat at a round table near the back, trying to enjoy the stuffed chicken breast and roasted vegetables. Then Dad stood, glass raised. His voice boomed over the microphone, smooth as if rehearsed. "Tonight, as a symbol of our love and faith in our son and his new wife, we want to gift them something priceless. Their first home." The crowd gasped, then broke into applause. My fork slipped against the porcelain plate with a screech. My brother's wife clasped her hands together, tears shining in her eyes. He grinned, kissed her cheek and mouthed, "Our house." "Our house?" I blinked hard, throat dry. "My house. Bought with my money, my name, well, it should have been mine, if not for that day at the notary when my parents convinced me to hand them the paperwork." Mom leaned close, her manicured nails brushing my arm. "Don't look so shocked, Ness. You'll have your chance later. He needs the head start more than you." I stared at her, the warmth of the hall suffocating. "You mean the house I paid for?" She forced a laugh, too loud, as though to cover my words from the guests nearby. "Sweetheart, don't be selfish. Family helps family. You'll understand when it's your turn." I looked across the hall at my brother, now clinking glasses with friends, his tie loosened, face glowing with pride. He didn't even glance my way. The DJ announced the next dance. People flooded the floor, swirling under the chandeliers. I stayed in my seat, hands clenched around the napkin until the fabric cut into my palms. I didn't argue. I didn't stand up and shout the truth. I folded the napkin carefully, stood, and slipped out through the side doors into the night. The air outside was cold, sharp against my skin, carrying the faint smell of city exhaust. I walked 3 blocks to my car, heels clicking on cracked pavement, each step harder than the last. Inside the silence of my car, I gripped the steering wheel and whispered. It was never theirs to give, but I didn't fight. Not then. Not yet. The house wasn't just 4 walls to me. It was 6 years of sacrifice, one paycheck at a time. At 24, I started my first job at a design firm downtown. My salary was modest, $41,000 a year, but I told myself I'd live lean. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, plaster still peeling from the ceiling, to save on rent. Every month I tucked away $900 into a savings account labeled Home Fund. Friends teased me for being stingy. They ordered cocktails while I drank water. They booked summer trips while I stayed behind, working late on freelance projects, logos, brochures, even wedding invitations for an extra $300 to $500 here and there. I tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet color-coded by month. By 28, my balance had climbed to $86,000. By 30, with a few bonuses and countless sleepless nights, I hit $112,000. Enough for a down payment and closing costs on the little two-bedroom bungalow on Oakwood Street. When I found it, the house smelled faintly of cedar and dust. The hardwood floors creaked, the kitchen tiles were chipped, and the backyard grass grew patchy under the sun. But it was mine, or so I thought. That's when my parents stepped in. Dad said it with the voice of authority that still made me feel 12 years old. "Vanessa, it's smarter if we put the deed under our names. You're young, you don't want to make mistakes with taxes." Mom softened it with reassurance. "Honey, banks respect older borrowers. We'll protect you from hidden legal risks. When you're ready, we'll sign it back over." I hesitated. My stomach twisted. But they smiled like it was common sense, like I'd be reckless not to trust them. I remember the notary's office, the fluorescent lights humming, the smell of toner, the heavy pen in my hand. I signed where Dad pointed, watching my name appear only as witness. The deed transferred into their names. My chest felt hollow, but I told myself it was temporary. I moved into the house anyway, painting the walls pale gray, planting daisies by the porch. On the first night, I lay on the floor with no furniture, staring up at the ceiling fan turning slow. I whispered, "It's mine," even though the papers said otherwise. But a year later at my brother's wedding, I learned just how wrong I'd been. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I had handed them the weapon they used to cut me out. 2 weeks after the wedding, when the noise of applause still echoed in my head, I pulled out the black fireproof box from the back of my closet. The metal was cool under my palms, the lock stiff as I turned the key. Inside lay 6 years of my life, stacked neatly in envelopes. I laid the papers across my kitchen table, the surface still scarred with faint paint splatters from my DIY projects. Each document carried weight. Bank statements showing transfers into my home fund account, month after month, highlighted in yellow. Wire receipts. $112,000 pulled from my savings into the closing escrow account. Closing documents with my signature under buyer's funds provided. I touched the paper, the ink slightly raised from the notary's seal. This was proof. Proof that while the deed sat in their names, every cent came from me. My chest tightened as I recalled Dad's words that day in the office. "It's just paperwork, Ness. Don't overthink it." But here in black and white, the trail led back only to me. I snapped photos with my phone, each page, each signature, each line of numbers. The screen glowed in the dim light of my kitchen, file names autosaving with the date. I scrolled through them once, my thumb shaking only slightly. And then, tucked between escrow papers, I found something I'd nearly forgotten. The original cashier's check receipt from my bank. $28,500, the down payment. My name alone on the payer's line. I held it up, paper thin but heavy with memory. The smell of ink still faint after all this time. I remembered the day I requested it, the bank teller congratulating me, saying, "First house? You must be proud." I was. I placed that slip on top of the pile, snapping one last photo. Then I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it houseproof. The files slid into place, lined up like soldiers ready for battle. As I stared at the glowing screen, a click settled inside me. Not anger, not grief, resolve. My parents thought the deed erased me. But they hadn't erased the trail of money, the fingerprints of my effort. And someday when the moment came, I'd use it. I made a choice. I wouldn't confront them yet. Not in anger. I would wait, gather, and be ready. Because evidence speaks louder than tears. The following Friday at 15:05, I sat in a quiet office 3 blocks from the courthouse. The blinds were half closed, letting in slivers of sunlight that striped across the worn carpet. The room smelled faintly of coffee grounds and old paper. Across from me sat Mr. Delaney, a lawyer recommended by a coworker. He adjusted his glasses, flipping through the stack of documents I'd pulled from my black box. My bank statements, the cashier's check, the escrow receipt, all fanned out across his desk. "This," he said, tapping the $28,500 cashier's check, "is irrefutable. You funded the down payment. These statements show you funded the rest. Legally, you have a claim even if the deed is in their names. I leaned forward. But I signed as a witness. They told me it was safer that way. He sighed. They used your trust. Yes, the deed complicates things. But courts follow the money. And this, he tapped the receipts again, is the money. The wall clock ticked over to 15:22. Each sound heavier than the last. What happens if I don't fight? I asked quietly. Then you lose the asset you built, he said. The property's market value is $348,000. You put in a third. Walk away and that's gone. I rubbed my thumb over the corner of the cashier's check. The paper felt rough, stubborn. And if I do fight? He looked at me steadily. Then you're ready for the storm. Your parents will argue it was a gift. Your brother will say he's the rightful owner now. But you have documentation. You're stronger than you think. His words cut deeper than he knew. Stronger than I thought. I slid the papers back into the envelope, sealing the flap with a firm press of my fingers. The smell of toner lingered on my hands. Not yet, I said. I won't take them to court yet. But I want to be ready when the storm comes. He nodded. Preparation is leverage. Keep every record safe. I walked out into the crisp evening air, my bag heavier on my shoulder, but my step lighter. The courthouse bell tolled in the distance, each note echoing like a warning and a promise. They thought the story ended at my brother's wedding toast. But my story was just gathering strength. The storm arrived sooner than I thought. It was mid-November 1910 when my phone rang. Dad's number flashed across the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my chest told me to pick up. His voice was tight, stripped of its usual authority. Vanessa, about the house. The boiler went out. Roof's leaking, property tax jumped. We need help covering it. Your brother isn't in a position right now. The silence stretched. I could hear the hum of the TV in the background, my mother coughing faintly. I said evenly, it's not my house. Remember? He bristled. Don't be cruel. This is family. You lived here too. You know what it means to carry responsibility. My heart thudded. Here it was, the leverage moment. I do, I said. Which is why I hired a lawyer. The pause on his end was sharp. What do you mean? I opened my laptop, clicking into the folder labeled Houseproof. With a few taps I attached scans, the cashier's check, the escrow receipt, 6 years of bank transfers. The email subject line read, Oakwood Street property expenses. I sent you something, I said. I heard Mom in the background, voice rising. What did she send? Dad opened the email. His exhale was audible through the phone. Where did you get these? They're mine, I replied. Every dollar that bought that house came from me. You put your names on it. You gave it away. But you can't erase the trail. He muttered, voice cracking now. You wouldn't take us to court. If you keep calling me for money, I will, I said softly. The lawyer already explained. Courts follow the money. And this time the money isn't yours. For a long moment, only the ticking of my wall clock filled the silence. Then he whispered, You do this to your own parents? I steadied my tone. You did this to your own daughter. I ended the call, my hands shaking, but inside me something shifted. I wasn't the obedient child who signed papers without reading. I wasn't the sister who swallowed betrayal for the sake of peace. I had drawn the line. And now they knew I could enforce it. By December, the ripple effects had set in. The Oakwood Street house was no longer a gift wrapped in applause. It was a weight. The property tax bill came due first. $6,480 for the year. My brother called me late one night, voice frantic. They're saying I have to cover half. I don't even have a steady job right now. I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of peppermint tea warming my hands, the city lights reflecting off my window. Talk to them, I said simply. It's your house, remember? A week later, the boiler broke during a cold snap. Repair estimate, $4,200. Dad left me 2 voicemails, both increasingly desperate. Vanessa, you know how these things go. You should contribute. After all, you lived there. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through the email chain with my lawyer, every document neatly attached. receipts, transfers, bank slips. My proof sat like a shield between me and their demands. At family gatherings, the whispers started. My aunt pulled me aside at Christmas, her breath smelling faintly of cinnamon cookies. Why did they put the house in their names if you paid? Everyone's talking about it. I shrugged, a small smile tugging at my lips. Ask them. Meanwhile, my parents' tone changed from confident to cautious. Calls came less often, always circling the same theme, money. My brother's voice lost its bravado. I didn't ask for this, he muttered when we bumped into each other at the grocery store. He stared at the floor tiles, shifting his weight, no longer the groom basking in applause. And me? My life grew quieter. I poured my energy into work, signing a new freelance contract worth $9,800 over 4 months. I bought a sturdy fireproof cabinet for my documents, sliding the folder inside like treasure. Every evening I lit a candle, let the calm settle, and reminded myself, their chaos wasn't mine to manage. The consequences were plain now. What they had paraded as a gift became a burden, and the daughter they tried to cut out was the only one who had the power to fix it. But I wasn't fixing anything anymore. For the first time, the imbalance had reversed. It was mid-January when the last attempt arrived. An envelope slid under my apartment door. The paper smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, cloying and familiar. Inside was a handwritten letter, scrawled in hurried strokes. Vanessa, your father and I only put the house in our names to protect you. We never meant harm. But now that things are hard, it's your duty to help. After all, family is about sacrifice. My chest tightened, but not from doubt. I sat at my desk, unfolded the letter beside my laptop, and opened my folder marked houseproof. Side by side, their narrative unraveled. Their letter claimed protection, but the receipts showed every cent wired from my accounts. Their letter spoke of sacrifice, but the escrow statement bore only my name. Their letter pleaded family, but the notary's stamp, dated March 12, 2021, 1417, told another story. That evening I called them. Dad answered, his tone brittle. We didn't mean to hurt you, Ness. But can't you see? We thought we were doing the right thing. I steadied my voice. The right thing wouldn't have ended with you handing my house to him at a wedding toast. Mom broke in, her voice high, strained. It was a gesture. We wanted to celebrate him. You'll understand when it's your turn. I glanced at the cashier's check receipt on my desk, the ink faded but undeniable. My turn was 6 years of saving. And you erased it with one announcement. Silence stretched across the line, heavy as concrete. Then Dad muttered, You're colder than we thought. No, I said quietly. I'm clearer than you expected. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I simply read out the numbers. $28, $500 down payment, $112,000 wired, $348,000 market value. Each digit was a nail in the coffin of their story. Finally, Mom whispered, We need your help. I exhaled, calm, steady. You'll need to find another way. I won't fund the lie that cost me my home. When I hung up, the room was silent except for the hum of the radiator. I slid their letter into the folder, not as proof for me but as a reminder. Their version no longer held power. The truth was sealed, and there was no gap left for their words to slip through. It's April now, 3 months since that last letter, and the silence is louder than the pleading ever was. In my apartment, the mornings begin with light spilling through the east-facing window. The air smells faintly of coffee and the lavender candle I light on the sill. I water the basil plant in its terracotta pot, watch the leaves grow, and think about how different life feels when no one is reaching for my pockets. The Oakwood Street house is no longer mine in name, but it is no longer my burden either. Property tax notices, repair bills, heating costs, all of it circles back to them and my brother. My phone no longer lights up with demands for money. When it does, I let it ring, my thumb never hovering over accept. My boundaries are simple now. No loans. No transfers. No paperwork without my name in full ink. I've been redirecting my energy into what is mine. At work, I secured a promotion that raised my salary to $58,000. I've opened a dedicated savings account marked Future Home, already with $12,400 tucked inside. Small compared to what I lost, but honest, clean, untouched by anyone else's hand. On weekends, I take long walks by the river trail. The air cool, geese cutting across the sky in ragged lines. Sometimes I stop on the bridge, lean against the railing and remind myself, I don't need their house to define my worth. My father once said, family means sacrifice. Maybe it does. But I've decided sacrifice won't always mean me. Tonight, I'll sit at my small dining table, pen in hand, mapping out the next 6 months. Pay down my student loans, grow my freelance side projects, maybe plan a trip abroad. Portugal in the fall, perhaps. I close my notebook, sip the last of my coffee, and feel the quiet fill the room. I am not the daughter who signs papers blind. I am not the sister erased with a toast. I am the woman who builds again on her own terms. And this time the foundation is mine.